The rule is simple. You either make it or you don't. There is no partial credit inside the FBI's hostage rescue team. No consolation tier, no almost. The men who built this unit designed it that way on purpose, because the situations it responds to do not have a partial credit option either. A hostage either comes home or they don't. You are not here yet, but you want to be, and wanting it is the first thing this process will use against you. This is what it costs to get inside the most elite tactical unit in federal law enforcement, and what it demands of the people who stay. The HRT was built in 1983, 3 years after the Munich disaster had shown the world what happens when governments have no credible surgical response to coordinated hostage-taking. The FBI looked at what existed, looked at what was needed, and built something from scratch. The result was a unit modeled partly on military special operations doctrine and partly on federal law enforcement authority, a hybrid that had never existed before in American law enforcement and has not been replicated since in quite the same form. From the beginning, the unit operated on a founding principle that has never been formally retired. The standard is the standard, not a relative standard, not a contextual standard, a fixed, non-negotiable benchmark that either you meet or you do not. The men who wrote that principle into the culture understood that in a barricade situation, in a hostage rescue, in a direct action environment, there is no time to compensate for a team member who is almost good enough. This is the first rule you learn before you learn anything else. Almost is the same as not at all. To be considered for HRT selection, you must first have been an FBI special agent for a minimum of 3 years. You must meet a physical fitness standard that eliminates most applicants before any formal evaluation begins. Pull-ups, sit-ups, a timed 2-mile run, a sprint, a swim. Not at a casual standard. At a number that reflects what the unit will ask of your body on an active deployment, in full kit, in conditions that are not controlled and not comfortable. The first filter is self-selection. The unit publishes what is required. Most agents read that list and make their own calculation quietly, without applying. They do the math privately and reach a private conclusion. No announcement, no formal withdrawal. They simply do not submit the paperwork. And in a building full of people who pass the bar to become federal agents in the first place, that quiet calculation happens more often than the unit ever advertises. Those who do apply report to Quantico for a 2-week selection course called New Operator Training School, NOTS. The name is functional and gives nothing away about what it actually is. What it is a sustained and methodical attempt to find the point at which a candidate breaks, quits, or stops being useful under pressure. The instructors are current HRT operators. They have been where you are trying to go. They do not explain this to you during the course. They do not need to. Day 1 of NOTS begins before you have adjusted to the time zone. The physical load in the first 48 hours is designed to eat into whatever reserve you arrived with. Runs in full kit, load carries, water entries, obstacle work, sleep that comes in fragments and stops before it finishes, food on a schedule you do not control. The environment is deliberately uncomfortable and deliberately unpredictable, because comfortable and predictable is not the environment you are being selected to operate in. The purpose of the physical load is not purely physical. It is a delivery mechanism for the psychological test underneath it. What the instructors are watching for in those first 2 days is not who is fastest or strongest. It is who makes sound decisions when they are exhausted, who communicates clearly when communication is the last thing their body wants to do, who maintains composure in front of the people around them when composure is actively costing them something. A candidate who is physically exceptional but mentally fragile is a liability in a hostage environment. A candidate who is physically adequate but psychologically durable is someone the unit can develop. The selection process is specifically calibrated to find the second type and remove the first. You do not know this going in. You think it is about the runs. That is the test. By day 4, the population of candidates has thinned. Some have medically withdrawn. Some have voluntarily withdrawn. The unit calls this VWing. And those two letters end the candidate's shot at HRT permanently. The FBI does not offer second attempts at NOTS. If you step off the line, that decision follows your personnel file for the rest of your career. The ones who remain begin to understand something the first days did not have room to teach. This is not a competition between candidates. It is a competition between each candidate and a fixed standard. The instructors are not hoping you fail. They are applying pressure consistently and watching honestly to see what holds. Peer assessment begins around this point. Candidates evaluate each other. Who do you want beside you when the situation has gone wrong and the options have narrowed? Who do you trust to make the right call when every available call has a cost? This is not a social judgment. It is a professional one, made under physical stress by people who have spent 4 days alongside each other in conditions that compress the timeline on revealing who someone actually is. Your score here is not shown to you. You will not know how your peers rated you or what the instructors recorded, but that number carries real weight in the final evaluation, and it is the one you had the least control over. The shooting component of NOTS tests a standard that most law enforcement qualification ranges do not come close to in routine practice. HRT operators are expected to shoot accurately under conditions that make accuracy physiologically difficult: elevated heart rate, physical fatigue, time compression, target discrimination under low light, and movement. The selection course tests whether a candidate has the marksmanship foundation and the mental control to perform at standard when their body is actively working against them. Former operators and available public records describe an accuracy threshold with almost no margin built in. You are not grouping shots in a quiet, controlled environment. You are expected to place rounds correctly while your hands are not fully steady. Your breathing is not fully controlled. The clock is running, and a miss in real application is not something you recover from. Failure at the range during NOTS is immediate. There is no remedial attempt. You perform at standard, or the selection ends for you there. This is the second rule. Stress is not an excuse. It is the condition you were selected to perform inside. Those who complete NOTS and receive offers move into a training pipeline of roughly 6 months before being considered operationally deployable. The unit trains across hostage rescue, direct action, close quarters battle, explosive breaching, maritime operations, airborne insertion, and a range of specialized environments that reflect the full operational history of the unit across 4 decades. The pipeline is not a reward for surviving selection. It is a continuation of the same principle. The standard does not soften because NOTS is behind you. It becomes more specific, more technical, more granular, because the actual scenarios the unit responds to require a level of rehearsed precision that cannot be improvised under operational pressure. New operators consistently describe this period as a simultaneous expansion of capability and reduction of ego. You are learning at a rate that does not plateau. You are also in daily contact with operators who have applied these skills in real environments under real stakes, and the gap between where you are and where they have been is never invisible. The culture inside HRT does not permit you to confuse competence with readiness. They are related. They are not the same. The operational history of HRT is written in the hardest possible ink. Ruby Ridge, 1992. Waco, 1993. 2 operations that became national conversations about federal authority, the limits of force, and the institutional cost that follows a unit when things go wrong publicly. Operators present at both have spoken, across the years, about what it means to be inside an event that history will reconstruct from the outside and from a distance. What it costs to have followed lawful orders in real time, under real pressure, in situations no training scenario had fully anticipated, and then to watch those decisions become the material of congressional hearings and documentaries for the next 30 years. The unit did not collapse under that weight. It absorbed it, reviewed its doctrine, adjusted its approach, and continued operating. The men who came after those years trained inside an institution that carried those events as instructional weight and not as permanent damage. This is the third rule. The unit is larger than any single moment, and every person inside it is smaller than the unit. What that rule asks of you, specifically, is that you never conflate your own performance or your own survival with the mission. Inside HRT, the individual operator is not the point. The team is the unit of function. The team is the thing that enters a structure, clears it, extracts the person who needs extracting, and gets out. Your role is to be exactly what the team needs you to be, in exactly the position you were assigned, at exactly the moment it matters. Not more visible than that, not less reliable than that. The culture actively corrects for operators who begin to treat personal reputation as a priority. That correction is not gentle, and it does not take long. In the years that followed those early crises, HRT accumulated a record in counterterrorism and domestic hostage response that operates largely outside public view by institutional preference. Successful operations where the outcome is precisely that no footage exists. Arrests completed without escalation. Crisis situations resolved before they reach the threshold that generates coverage. The absence of a news cycle is sometimes the most precise measure of how well the unit performed. Former operators describe deployments where the entire operational value of HRT's presence was that the situation never became a situation. The positioning that produced a surrender. The planning that made a breach unnecessary. This version of the unit, the one that ends things before they begin, does not appear in the documentary record. It is, by most accounts from inside the organization, the version the unit considers its clearest professional expression. The work no one sees is still the work. It still extracts the same cost from the people doing it. An HRT assignment runs 2 years for most operators, after which rotation back to field office positions is standard. Some return for additional tours. A smaller group remains as permanent cadre. The rotation policy serves the broader FBI. Operators carry the HRT standard into field offices across the country. But it also exists because sustained HRT operational tempo produces a documented toll on the people who hold it. Operators describe a pace that reshapes time, training that does not pause between deployments, physical maintenance that functions as a parallel occupation, family schedules organized around alert windows that shift without advance notice, a state of readiness that makes no distinction between a Tuesday afternoon and 4 in the morning on a weekend. The body adapts. It keeps adapting, past the point where the adaptations are all useful. Joint deterioration from years of loaded movement, sleep that no longer fully resets, a baseline alertness so constant it stops registering as elevated, until the assignment ends and the absence of that tempo becomes its own kind of disorientation. This is not a condition unique to HRT. It is the shared cost of sustained high-readiness work across the full spectrum of special operations. What is particular to HRT is that the people inside it entered a federal law enforcement career, not a military one, and arrived somewhere that resembles the latter in almost every demand it makes on a life. They knew what it was. They chose it anyway. The choice does not reduce what it cost. The fourth rule is the one no one states directly, but everyone inside understands from early in the first year. You do not get to decide when enough is enough. The standard decides. The mission decides. The building you were not briefed on until this morning, in the city you landed in 4 hours ago, with the floor plan that does not match the one you rehearsed, that decides. Your personal accounting of what you have already given is not a variable the unit factors. This is not indifference to the individual. It is the structural logic of a unit whose function depends on the assumption that every operator is what they were trained to be, every time, regardless of what came before. The line holds because everyone holds it. One person negotiating their own threshold in real time is the failure mode the entire selection process exists to prevent. The men who washed out of NOTS and the men who spent full federal careers without attempting it share something. They were never tested at that specific standard, under those specific conditions, at that specific cost. You cannot determine from the outside which category you belong in. There is only one way to find out. Most people do not go find out. That distance between the people who met the standard and the people who never learned whether they could is not a verdict on either group. It is simply the space between two different kinds of life. One of them is quieter, one of them is not. Both are real. The operators who have served in HRT and chosen to speak about it publicly describe the experience in measured, specific terms. They do not perform the weight of it. They account for it plainly. The training, the operations, the rotations, the cost of returning, in the voice of people who found the thing they were built for and paid honestly to stay inside it for as long as it lasted. What they rarely describe in full is the person who existed before the standard got hold of them. The agent who arrived at Quantico for the first time with a candidate number and a fitness score and a functional confidence that they had some sense of what they were walking into. That person passed through something that permanently altered the architecture of who they were. What came out was more capable, more precise, more expensive in every sense than what went in. Whether it was worth it is a calculation each of them runs privately, in the silence that accumulates after a career spent in the loudest and most consequential rooms available to a person in federal service. The unit does not ask the question. It never needed to. The unit's position has always been simple. If you are asking whether it was worth it, you were never fully certain you wanted to be there. And the people who are fully certain do not ask. They already know. That certainty is what always got them through the door.